Karl Popper. Born in Vienna on July 28, 1902, Karl Raimund Popper was one of the great philosophers and among the most important philosophers of science of the 20th century. He was also a philosophical champion of liberalism and a proponent of an open society. He called himself a critical rationalist and opposed skepticism, conventionalism, and relativism in science. Born into a Jewish family, he did not follow his father into the law, but both parents instilled in him an interest in the classics, philosophy, and music. In graduate school, Popper chose the history of music as a second subject for his Ph.D. examination. Popper was educated at the Real Gymnasium, which he left to attend the University of Vienna in 1918, although he did not formally enroll until 4 years later. In his young manhood, he was a socialist and, for a time, a Marxist. Soon disillusioned with Marxism, however, he turned to Freud and Adler and fell under the spell of Albert Einstein. The great virtue of Einstein, he came to believe, was that his major theories were testable and falsifiable, whereas the work of Marx, Freud, and Adler were testable only by way of confirmation. Popper did not leap into an academic career but trained as a cabinet maker, earned a primary school teaching diploma in 1925 and a secondary school qualification to teach mathematics and physics in 1929. In the meantime, he studied at the doctoral level in the Department of Psychology at the University of Vienna and was awarded a Ph.D. in 1928 for his dissertation Die Methodenfrage der Denkpsychologie, the methodological question of thought psychology. He questioned the validity of psychology as a science, focusing on issues of method and objectivity. In 1937, Popper accepted a position teaching philosophy at the University of Canterbury, New Zealand, which would become his sanctuary through World War II. In 1938, annexation of Austria, Anschluss, prompted Popper to address problems in social and political philosophy, which resulted in the 1945 publication of The Open Society and Its Enemies, a critical condemnation of totalitarianism. In 1946, Popper moved to London to teach at the London School of Economics and 3 years later was appointed Professor of Logic and Scientific Method at the University of London. He launched into an extraordinarily prolific writing career and in 1959 published his first seminal treatise in the philosophy of science, The Logic of Scientific Discovery. Popper viewed science and epistemology from what he called the perspective of critical rationalism, thereby rejecting the empiricism of the Kantian tradition, which assumed that basic statements are infallible. He argued such statements were no more than descriptions in relation to a theoretical framework, and that scientific theories are abstract, capable of only indirect testing by evaluation of their implications. From this, he concluded that all human knowledge is ultimately hypothetical. With respect to science, no amount of positive experimental outcomes can confirm a theory.
Are you a philosophy student or just have a general interest in philosophy? Since ancient times, brilliant philosophical teachings and dialogues taught by great luminous minds have deeply elevated the way we think and live. The Complete Philosophy Primer is a comprehensive, organized, easy-to-read, and all-encompassing guide specifically written for students in their first college-level philosophy course, as well as anyone with an interest in philosophy. With this jam-packed philosophical guide, you will optimize your knowledge in philosophy, logic, ethics, its history, and branches. Learn philosophical concepts, term definitions, and biographies. Find lists of essential books, films, blogs, websites, and other resources. Improve your writing skills. Learn how to argue effectively. And most of all, learn how to be a better student. Order your copy today to philosophize your mind and illuminate your wisdom.
However, a single counterexample is definitively falsifying. He cautioned that the falsifiable nature of a given theory did not imply that the theory was false, but could be shown to be false by observation or by experiment. Thus, Popper concluded there is a vast logical asymmetry between verification and falsifiability. This condition formed the core of Popper's philosophy of science. Popper posited falsifiability as the criterion of demarcation between a genuine and a non-genuine scientific theory. A theory is scientific only if it is falsifiable. Thus, psychoanalysis and other putative sciences did not merit a claim to being deemed scientific. Their theories are not falsifiable. Popper came to recognize a kinship between his standard of falsification and Charles Peirce's 19th century doctrine of fallibilism. Falsification led Popper to explore, he claimed to solve, the philosophical problem of induction. There's no deductive proof that the sun will rise, yet based on induction, one can formulate a theory that every day the sun will rise. Should it fail to rise someday, the theory will be falsified, but until that day, there is no compelling reason to reject the assumption of its truth. Induction cannot be logically justified. In this, Popper agreed with David Hume, but that is no reason to spurn induction, which is invaluable. Popper applied falsification to The Open Society and Its Enemies and The Poverty of Historicism, 1957, to critique historicism as a theory that history necessarily develops according to knowable general laws toward a determinate end. Not only is this invalid, he argued, but it is morally corrupt in that it justifies authoritarianism and totalitarianism. As a metaphysician, Popper argued that the search for truth is a compelling motive for scientific discovery. In Objective Knowledge, 1972, he argued that scientific knowledge approaches objectivity once it is stated in language, which transforms it into an entity that evolves through critical selection as the means of truth becomes a matter of how the theory corresponds to facts. Popper proposed 3 worlds. One world consists of the physical world or physical states. World 2 is the world of mind, including mental states, ideas, and perceptions. World 3 is the body of knowledge. In other words, the products of World 2 made physically manifest in the things of World 1. Popper argued that World 3 was the product of individual human beings and therefore has an existence independent of any individually known subjects. World 3 exerts an influence as strong as that of World 1, so that the knowledge in any individual mind owes at least as much to the cumulative store of human knowledge made manifest as it does to the individual's direct experience. For this reason, the growth of knowledge may be considered a function of the independent evolution of World 3. Popper's long, distinguished, immensely productive life ended on September 17, 1994, when he succumbed to complications of cancer in London at the age of 92.